The Expansion Zone with Sonia Barrett.
Everybody's talking about consciousness. Everybody wants that eternal kiss. Yeah, everyone's saying there's more than this. Everyone wants to follow their own bliss. Talking about one love, one blood, one life in everyone. One life, give each other. We are sisters and brothers. We sing Om.
On the Expansion Zone, we examine life and our quest to understand who and what we are and of the vastness of human potentials. We explore the making of our world from quantum physics to parapsychology, health, sociology, and philosophy, along with practical living. You are reminded of the possibilities in creating personal change. So for an hour, we'll stimulate and expand the mind.
Shanti, 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 shanti. Sing the world. Let's do it together. Shanti, shanti, shanti. It's time to wake up. Shanti, shanti, to a brighter day. Realize that. Shanti, shanti.
Well, welcome once again to another edition of the Expansion Zone with Sonia Barrett. And of course, that's me, your host, Sonia Barrett. As always, happy to be here on this Monday and really just aiming to make not just every Monday, but every day as inspirational as possible. Thank you for tuning in and just being diligent. Many of you express your diligence in tuning into the show on Monday. So thank you for that. Thank you for your support. And of course, right out the gate, let me remind you to keep that in mind about becoming a sustaining member for the KPFK family, the KPFK station. And you can do so by calling 8189-855735 to do so. So I look forward to that. All right. Now, the quote for today, for Monday. I love this quote, as I love all the quotes, but this one says, when we long for life without difficulties, remind us that oaks grow strong in contrary winds and diamonds are made under pressure. And that's by Peter Marshall. I'm going to talk about that in just a second, a little bit more, just a few tidbits, insights, tips. But today's topic is going to be about stepping into the full power of your voice in creating social and personal change. Of course, it's a massive subject. So I'm looking forward to engaging in that discussion. And of course, my guest, who is going to enlighten us with information and insight, is Helane Marie Anderson, who is a transformational voice coach, a musician, singer, pianist, and sound healer, and way more. Too many to list here, but she is really amazing, very just fantastic. She's also a friend, and I'm happy to say that. So, all right, let's just look at just chatting about this for just a moment. And again, it's the quote, when we long for life without difficulties, remind us that oaks grow strong in contrary winds and diamonds are made under pressure. Again, a quote by Peter Marshall. And of course, at this time, many have faced, I believe, tremendous pressure, uncertainties, and difficulties. But like the phoenix, you can rise. We can all rise. Out of chaos can come personal order, personal positive changes. And that's something that we must keep in mind. There is so much that can come from this moment, this very moment in time, that can absolutely inspire new growth and new ideas. So at this time, be open to allowing those opportunities to show up without overshadowing them with this state of things that are going on outside of yourself. So it's that pulling back of oneself so that you can see what's possibly there for you during this time. So a bit about our guest. Helane Marie Anderson is a transformational voice coach, singer, pianist, sound healer, musician, composer, energy healer, author, multi-instrumentalist, and teacher. Her unique style of working with sound blends years of studying healing modalities with contemporary music and sound healing. LA Yoga Magazine states, Helane Marie Anderson sings like an angel, taking you into the celestial world with her voice paired with crystal singing bowls, chimes, and alchemical bowls, based on her unique journey through a performing arts career that eventually led her down a healing path. Helene's book and transformational voice program, You Are Meant to Sing, 10 Steps to Unlocking Your Inner Voice, combines her training and background into focused work with the voice. The intention behind her programs is to create a space that allows people to step into their power and purpose while connecting deeply with the voice through speaking, singing, and action. Her website is sacralsounds.com. Well, Helane Marie Anderson, welcome to the Expansion Zone.
Oh, thanks so much, Sonia. I'm really happy to be here and to be present at this moment in time.
Yes, what a time. We can look at it. We can look at it in the other part, or just the one-sided, misery. But then we can also take a moment to go, okay, well, so this is happening. What can I do for myself, or what's there for me? And I think those opportunities are there. So this is why it's so great speaking to you, because this is a very vocal moment internally, I think, more than anything else. What would you say about that? More than just external, because there's so much going on in the voice of our minds and in our thought process, but it's still all voice, correct?
For sure. And one of the things that's kind of funny for me, and I'm sure like many people probably made a comment to themselves as the year started of, wow, it'd be really nice to have a break, or really nice to have a sabbatical or something. And I started this year with really an intention to deepen my relationship with myself. And so I wrote it down, I told friends, I did the whole thing. And so when the quarantine happened, I was like, well, universe, that wasn't exactly what I meant when I said that. But I've since talked to a number of people that had similar thoughts, that now we're in this time where it was a reset. It's been an internal reset for everyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this time to go internal. I always question with the voice, how are you speaking, being thoughtful of how you're speaking, how you tell your story, how we shift our thought patterns is so much a part of the singing and the vocal work that I do. And it's so important. And during this time, I've done 3 online meditation retreats for the 9 Bodies of Consciousness practice that Philip Moffitt wrote the book about it. And he learned it from a yogi in India. This really deep practice that's based originally in Vipassana, but it's a whole other level. And I feel for myself, a lot of the silent part of the voice, of really listening to the internal voice, which was your question, that internal structure of the voice that's found when you go really deep into meditation, helps with all of the practices of the outward manifestation of the voice.
Yeah, I mean, when we decided to do this this interview, I was really thinking about that we don't really think about the depth of the idea of the voice and the mind and the voice. How it's not always just about what you can hear with your ears, but what's going on the inside, and people being able to express how they feel and all of that. So yeah, so those are some things that I wanted you to be able to really make emphasis on, because what happens when, you know, we don't feel as if we can express how we feel. And it's not just outwardly. Once again, I keep emphasizing inwardly, because that's what happens. We tend to choke the voice on the inside as well. So do you want to talk about that a little bit more?
For sure. I think that when I work with people directly, and my intention behind all of the work I do with the voice is really to empower people. But you can't be empowered if you don't truly know who you are deeply internally. And often I find when I work with people, the way that they've tried to sing, or they're afraid of singing, or they're afraid of public speaking, or they're afraid of expressing themselves, is because they haven't taken the time yet to really know where they're speaking from internally. Because I find, even for myself, having had a really busy life, and the way things going from one event to the other, and this client to this client, there's a moment sometimes where I think, myself included, sometimes it's easy to forget to take that time to really pause. And often the demands of daily life, it's not possible to take that time to pause. Because people are too exhausted, or they're overworked, or they have too many commitments. And so what I try to do is to create space where I tell people, you can make these transformations if you can commit to 15 to 30 minutes a day. If you start a daily practice, and you're using your voice, and you're sitting with yourself, and you work with mantras, which we can talk about in a minute. But going deep into that space of knowing so deeply who you are and on the inside, that you're able to see the way that your thoughts and your feelings and the way you feel about yourself ultimately is reflected on the outside. And so to shift patterns, to shift the way your life looks, to shift into something that you're really passionate about, it takes taking that time to be still with the internal voice. Because one of the other things that I often address is the voices in our heads. And all of us have these voices in our heads. And even in my book, I mention it. It always reminds me of Fred Flintstone, because anyone who watched the Flintstones growing up, he always had these dilemmas where he'd have the angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other shoulder. And I feel like we all have that to some extent. We all have the voices that want to take us this way, and the voices that want to take us the other way. And so when we're really clear where those voices are really from, whether they're from our own internal beliefs, or whether they are from someone else's belief about us that's not true, getting so quiet with yourself to be able to identify the voice helps you be able to work with it, and to be able to shift it into something different. And so for me personally, this time has been a gift to go more internal without feeling like I need to run around all the time and be super busy all of the time. And I know that's not the case for everyone. However, I do feel like when you have that time, and you take the time to go internal, and you have a restructuring and a shift, how you're going to express your voice on the other side is going to be different. And even as you and I touched base about during this time, I feel really strongly, having watched the way people communicate on social media sometimes, that it's very stemmed in people's woundings and people's traumas. And I think it's really important, even if we disagree with people or we don't believe the same thing, that we be mindful with our voices, that blaming and shaming people for not doing what you think they should do doesn't help anyone. So it's, you know, I mean, there are clearly things that shouldn't be done, just to be clear on that. There's certain human actions that are not okay. But in general, the the way that people communicate, sometimes there's this almost a permission sometimes on social media that people can express their voices in a way that they might never actually do in person. And so even to respond to the social movements for myself, I saw so much of this that it was important to me to bring consciousness around the discussion and how people can talk about it and how people can make the change. Because I feel like that's a way of expressing your voice in a way that helps to actually bring the change into the world. Because I feel really strongly, if you're voicing anger, anger begets anger. But it's not the same as spiritual bypass. Like spiritual bypass means you don't, you're just bypassing the anger. I have no intention. I actually invite people I work with to go deep into the anger and feel the anger and use that anger to turn it into positive action. Because anger can be a really big driving force in your passion and your ambition. It's just to be really careful where you're directing that energy. And that's really ultimately what I believe when we talk about the power of the voice and going internal. It's giving permission to feel all of those things, but then choosing how you respond to things that upset you and dealing with it in a way that's healthy for you to move forward. And I feel like that piece. And what I've found, even with the singing work that I do, with the vocal toning work that I do, all of that starts to come up and bubble to the surface. And singing is so powerful because, of course, like you said, I work with sound. I do sound healing. That's the primary focus that I use with the voice too. And when you have this vibrational force in your body and your being, which is your voice, you can use the vibration of your voice to also move the energy to create change, to change the neural patterns in the brain through the mantra work that I do. And I feel all of that is super important because it's a layered process. And what I've found is that most people that come to me or seek me out, there's some blockage, like there's somewhere along the way where they were told that their voice didn't matter, or told that their singing voice wasn't good enough, or told that by a family member or a mentor or something that what they had to say wasn't relevant or it wasn't true. And so many people hold on to these things, myself included, which is why I was inspired to create this program and do this work, because everybody's voice deserves to be heard. And so that is really part of my platform and part of why getting clear on your beliefs and what you stand for is really important.
Oh my gosh. Yes. I mean, you said so much that is very important in terms of, yes, how we're responding, particularly in this time, how we're reacting. And also communication is a core piece of this journey. Wars are started because of communication or no communication. So there we have the voice again. The voice is a significant tool in this human experience, and how we express it, what we express, what those words are, how they come out, the energy behind it, the force behind the words as they come out of our mouths. We can say the same string of words with a different force behind it. So so we see how significant all of this is. And I also wanted to say that Helene and I had done, in the very beginning of all of this, we did a social closeness, we called it, workshop.
Great name, Sonia.
Yeah, social closeness. I know, it's like, social distancing. And I at the time I was thinking, no, we've, this is about closeness. We have to keep that in mind so that we don't fragment. You know what I mean? We don't start really fragmenting. Okay, you're doing 6 feet apart, but keeping that realization of the connection which you want to pick that up. I don't know if you wanted to interject in terms of even this weaving of the voices.
Well, I think that's really interesting, and I think that the connection piece of it is really important because it's almost more imperative now that we find ways to feel connected to people if we're not seeing people or not having events or not doing our regular activities. And I think really focusing on that and how we've created it and done our best to do it through Zoom workshops. And that I will say that the energy healing sessions that I've done over Zoom have been almost, if not more, effective than when I've done them in person, which is interesting because I do think sometimes we rely so much on our physical responses to things that when you really, it's given me a chance to really get clear on my energetic sensibilities in this time. And I think that part's been beautiful. And the other really big advantage to Zoom and doing these courses and workshops online is that people can literally join from anywhere. And so the dance class that I was used to taking went online, and there were weeks where there were more than 450 people signed on to Zoom dancing. And it was just really beautiful thing to see in terms of that connected place. But the other thing that I've just come, and it was something I knew just in terms of my own practices and things I've done in the past, but to really experience at moments when I was doing, especially that first online meditation retreat, there was a moment when I experienced pure bliss. And I was just sitting on the floor in my bedroom on a cushion. And I think that there's something about that connection to, it doesn't really matter what your spiritual beliefs are, your connection to your higher self, to God, to however you define that energy outside of yourself. When you are in that space and you can access that pure connection, when we talk about connection, I found that everything felt different, and it was easier to see the connection on my daily walks around my neighborhood, or see the connection with nature, or see the connection with the flower that I walk by. And there was a really interesting shift there. And then also, like you said, I am very into semantics and words. And so we've talked about that before. And what you just said, this social closeness instead of social distance. And when you keep using the same words, it does create the vibration of that thing, because sound is physical vibration. Our voices are physical vibration. We're creating energy waves. That's physics. That's pure science. And so if we're consistently saying the same thing about this social distance, or I need to distance from people, and so that's why I loved the title you came up with so much, of social closeness, because if we can change or shift around it, that this was the time, for me, that maybe our planet needed a rest, because our planet is very angry right now, and evidenced by a lot of stuff that's happening between the fires and the hurricanes and everything else that's going on in the world. And really taking that time to know the things and see the things in our big corporate structures that are not really working anymore. And I don't have the answers about how it's going to look on the other side or how it's going to shift and change, but it's definitely been an eye-opening moment of so many elements of the way our culture has been functioning that just don't work as well. And so when we can take that time to really step into what's important to us personally, and that's again part of my mission, if I can empower people to step into creating what they're meant to create, then I feel like I'm doing my work. Like I feel like I'm doing my divine work in this world, because that's part of my mission is to help people step into making that change that they feel called to make, and they may not have the courage to yet, that I can hold that space for them to step into that space further. Because exercising your voice, it is singing, it is speaking, but it's really ultimately about showing up as you and what you're meant to do in the world in a really strong, empowered way.
So when you say, or the title of your book, you were meant to sing, it's really encompassing, because immediately, you're going to think, oh, just singing. But you've basically described, and we've both talked about the voice, in the many levels of which it's being used as this tool. So basically we can say talking is a different form of singing. I mean, you just start looking at it differently. It's just the use of the voice, again, because of how it's used, the tone behind it, whether it's a question mark behind it or an exclamation sign behind what is being said. There are pitches, right? There's different pitches. So I think that's really interesting, just looking on at the fact that, we're all singing in different ways, but you're helping to really help people to shape how they're thinking about using their words, or just even using them at all.
For sure, because if you're constantly saying, my life is this, my life is X, my life is X, then inevitably your life is going to be X.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just kind of, and we're not really taught this in school. We're not taught how important it is to use your words and how you use them, and the energy that affects other people when you use your words in these specific ways. And so, as you said, yeah, my book is You Are Meant to Sing, 10 Steps to Unlock Your Inner Voice. I've worked with, most of the people I work with do sing. Either they like to sing, or they like to sing once and that now they want to step into singing more. They really sing in the shower and they just felt something was blocked in their throat and they really wanted to work through that. Everybody that I've worked with has had a slightly different intention, but definitely I don't work in a conventional way. Say like the sessions that I do are very much part voice coaching, because there is a technical element, and and I'm also a classical singer, and and pianist, and that was my background. So for me, it's singing is my niche, and I feel like singing, whether you feel like you have a great voice or you don't, is not really the point. It's just, if you like to sing, it's about really tapping in to the energy force that's within you, that's inside of you, that you can access and help shift things in your life when you start to feel some way that you don't like how it feels. And there's that vocal alchemy process that I show people, of how you take the anger, you take the sadness, and then you just sit with it sometimes, and how you move it through the voice. Because again, I'm not into spiritual bypass. I just feel like I need to say that once more. I'm into how you transmute the feelings.
Right. And voice is about expression. So singing, I mean, you're expressing in a song. And so you can hear someone sing a song and it just hits you a certain way, or you pick up even the joy or the emotions of the singer. I mean, I've seen concerts where you go and people that they may have great voices and you're like, wow, that was really good. And then I've been to concerts where the person is so electric. I mean, it's just unbelievable how they can transform an entire room because they become the music. So, I'm saying that because there's so many different levels and possibilities in terms of the voice and singing that we've seen, and in working with you as well. It's just a lot of things that you learn about yourself and your own voice.
For sure. And I think that the most important thing that I tell people is that you don't have to have a great voice, think you have a great voice. It's not about that. It's about learning how to use it, because I do feel like everybody who wants to sing can learn how to sing. And whether they're a professional singer or they're not a professional singer, it doesn't really matter. It's just kind of going into that space. And there are a few classical singers that I've worked with, and this was also my journey, is that I felt very disconnected from my voice. When it was so focused on technique, there was almost an element where I got disconnected from the voice that was really inside of me, because it was so focused on the perfection and doing it this way and doing it that way. And so I combine the two, like, because I feel like technique is important. You want to know what you're doing. You want to know how to use your breath. It takes time to learn those mechanisms. It takes time to learn placement of the voice. However, I think the true connection to the voice comes from something much deeper within. So if you don't address all of the somatic elements of the voice that are blocked, then you're never going to be able to sing to your full capacity, because those blocks are still going to be there until they're looked at and they clear.
Mm-hmm. Some things that you were saying just now, it made me look at this word, and here I go again, but it made me look at this. What popped up is social permission. When it comes to singing, and we're talking about actual just being able to sing, and you're expressing right now that anybody, if you love to sing, you want to sing, anybody can really be trained to sing, to be skilled enough to enjoy singing. Well, but then when you look at it, you realize the reason why we even feel the way we feel about who's able to sing and who's not, a lot of it is based on this social approval of, what's okay, whose voice is okay and whose voice is not. And I think so we evaluate ourselves based on that model. And therefore, yeah, it is. We end up looking for social permission. And this is voice, but this is about many things in our lives.
I'm really glad that you brought up that point, because that's also a really important point about finding your voice, is that you're gonna piss people off sometimes. It's just the way it is.
Right.
Because if you're somebody that is a change maker, if you're somebody that steps into that space of really creating your passion and your purpose, sometimes you're going to trigger people, because you're going to trigger people that maybe don't want to hear what you have to say. I mean, there are always people that are going to disagree with you, and it's like you have to learn to develop neutral feelings about some of that, and even when you do have feelings about it, to learn how to process them in a way that is healthy, because it will happen. And I tell that to everyone I've worked with. If you're going to go through a change and an evolution of yourself and step further into your power, a lot of your relationships are going to change. And that's just the inevitable effect of stepping into a different space or healing your wounds. Because if you had any relationships or friendships or otherwise that were really based in your wounds, then when you start to heal those wounds, those relationships, and literally I think of the world in terms of vibration, they're just not, you're not going to vibrate in the same frequency anymore. And it's not good or bad or different. Like, everyone in our life is a gift. Everyone in our life is there to teach us something, whether we like them or not, or like the lesson or don't like the lesson. Everybody's here as a teacher. And if you can adopt that, it's really important. And then the second piece of that is to, when you're stepping into that power of your voice and being 100% clear about what your mission is and what you're meant to do, and to step into this realm of feeling like your wounds are your gift and don't define who you are anymore, then that's really when you have the power to implement the action for what you want to create with your voice in the world. And so that's the piece that I feel really inspired to help people. Because when you have, and this is myself included, there's a power in having a witness to your process. And it doesn't have to be many people. It can be one person. whether it's a coach, whether it's a healer, whether it's someone that you work with, if you're ready to step in and heal a wound that's been defining a lot of your life, having somebody hold that space, because at the end of the day, I don't do the internal work. The people I work with do the work. I hold space and witness their evolvement.
Right.
Right? And so I think it's really important to make that distinction. However, I think for all of us, when we want to step into a deeper space of healing, a witness, I find you're going to get there faster if you have someone witness and hold space for really what I found is the most difficult feelings that you've ever had. The feelings that you never say out loud, the feelings that your voice has never felt comfortable or safe to express. And so in holding that space for those things to be expressed in a safe environment where people can do whatever they need to do, and I have vocal techniques for getting that energy out of the system, then that's when I see the most effective change in people. Because those are the parts of the voice that get stuck sometimes, and there are always good reasons for it. Often it's a trauma, either a physical trauma like an accident, or some kind of trauma in their past through their family, through a mentor, through someone, and they get shut down. And so giving that particular piece and identifying when, where that happened, and expressing the feelings that maybe got swallowed literally during that moment, and then bringing them back up to clear, that's when I see the most transformation in people, because they feel then more confident to move forward, and then whatever they were feeling was blocking them, it releases.
Well, let's do this. I wanted to actually chat about that a bit more after the break, the courses, the coaching, the mantra you mentioned. And yes, I think having someone there, I mean, like people do with diets and all of that, there's a level of accountability there, you know, having somebody else there, it just somehow it helps a lot of people. That's what I've heard. Because they are the ones that are going to be doing the work. It doesn't matter what it is. It's like you have to do the work in the end. But I want to come back and I want to talk about these things after the break. So please stay tuned, and we will be right back after this very brief message. And we are back. Of course, you're tuned in to KPFK 90.7 FM in Southern California, and also streaming live at kpfk.org. You are, of course, listening to The Expansion Zone with Sonia Barrett, and that's me, your host. And right now we are chatting with my guest, Helane Marie Anderson, and she is the author of You Were Meant to Sing. And we are really talking about one of the more significant tools that we have, and it is our voice, which stands for so much more than we actually realize. It's it's our communication system. So, Helane, you were talking about some of the tools that you use during coaching. So I'd love for you to just kind of get some more of that in, and the courses that are coming up, and also the giveaway that we have. So we got a few things here that we want to be able to get in before we run out of, what is it, showtime.
Well, first I'll say with the tools, one of the things that I use when we just talked about that alchemical process with the voice, the first thing that I teach people is how to strengthen the diaphragm through the diaphragmatic breath. And the diaphragm, because it's located right in our solar plexus, which is the power center of the body, when you learn how to use that breath, then it empowers everything. And most people have a hard time with it at first, but after they practice, they get it right. And that's also how you control the breath when you're singing, is through the diaphragm. And because the diaphragm is mostly an involuntary muscle, but you can make it voluntary by doing breath practices. And there are a lot of yogic breath practices in pranayama. However, most of those go opposite to how you use the diaphragm when you sing. And so a lot of people I work with have done a lot of yoga in the past, and so it's a retraining of that muscle, but it also makes it more flexible. I always tell people when you start singing, look at it as if you're starting to train for a marathon, and it's going to take a minute. You're not going to get it right away, and that's okay. So that's one of the techniques. Sometimes when people are doing the alchemical process of dealing with anger, and I just did a workshop on that recently, I use the technique of screaming into a pillow, actually, but screaming from the diaphragm in a way that's healthy, where you don't damage your vocal cords, and in a way of like moving that energy through the body and allowing that energy to move you into powerful action. Because I think it's really important to note that any feeling you're feeling that you don't want to be feeling, like if you're feeling super sad and you want to be feeling something else, if you allow yourself to go 100% into that feeling and then you express it through the voice, then it really hits a whole other level of what a person is capable of doing with their emotions, because it's really like emotional vocal alchemy. And then one of the other tools that I do use the energetic healing in the space. And just to be clear, we do sing. We do, like, there is singing as part of it.
There is singing? Oh my goodness. I had no idea. No.
And there is singing that is part of it. And for people that work with me for longer periods of time, my base program is 6 weeks when I work with people privately, which is probably going to extend till 10 weeks going forward. But that is the most important time period for people to step into the space of being able to create real change in their lives. And the reason that 6 weeks is the time that I chose initially is that in mantra practice, in the Indian tradition, in Sanskrit, what I've always been taught and learned through yogic principles is that it takes 40 days to reset a neuron pattern in the brain. And so when you work with a mantra for 40 days, and you use a set of mala beads, which are those long beaded necklaces that have 108 beads around them. They're 108 because 108 is an auspicious number that is created in a lot of sacred geometry, which I can get into later. You can totally look it up. There's a lot of information about it on the web of why it's 108 beads. But for 40 days, you're supposed to recite the mantra. Either you can speak it or sing it. Of course, I encourage my students to sing it, and we work on that and developing your own melody and developing your own mantra. And so you use the beads as a counter. And so you do one round with the beads every day for at least 40 days. And what it does is it activates a healing crisis, which is similar to if any of you have ever done a juice cleanse or a detox diet or something like that, where often the symptoms that you're clearing come up to the surface to clear as they're releasing. And so what happens with the mantra practice is that a lot of the things that have been the blocks will come up to the surface to release during that time. And then on the other side, it starts to shift into the energy that that person is calling in. And I always really reiterate that with my clients, because there's usually a point around weeks 2 or 3 where they're like, oh, this isn't working. It isn't working. And I'm like, no, it is working. That's the thing. Like, it is working. I promise it's working. It's on purpose. I mean, I even had one client last year who 2 to 3 weeks into her practice, she had an ex-boyfriend that she hadn't seen in 5 years. That was her like long-term relationship that didn't work out. Move in around the corner, and she ran into him on the street, and they had this massive healing of what their relationship had been and the purpose around it during that time. And that had been one of her blocks.
Wow, it's so amazing. The different levels of blocks that are there. And, you know, that's the reason why when I've heard people say, you know, I've worked on myself and I've worked on this, or I've moved past whatever it is. You know, a lot of times I prefer to just kind of like not even say that, because sometimes there's this residue, you know, And then it just shows up depending on what is going on in your life, and there's that little bit that's still left, and so it's this constant cleaning house as things show up, and yeah.
And I think that the important thing to note, and this is what I tell people too, it's like if that layer of the onion comes up, recognize the feeling might feel the same about it, the energy around it might feel the same, but you are actually different. And so notice, one, you're noticing it right away, and two, you probably have a lot of tools to know how to shift it a little quicker. And even in my own process during this time, I noticed certain things that I do that I really hadn't realized fully before. I'm like, wow, this is really interesting. And that's like me observing myself. And how do I shift this? And I think for me, the process that I take people through in those 6 weeks is the same process that took me probably 7, 8 years to go through in a way. And so I wanted to help people get there sooner, but it also means that sometimes it can be a little intense in the process. And that's why I like holding this space for people to have the opportunities, because unfortunately, it's not we ask for something and we wave the magic wand and then it's like magically appears. If only that was the case, the genie in the bottle, right? But what it is that you actually can have those things and you can get there faster. You just have to be willing to do the work and put the work into it. And I think,
like everything else.
yeah, like everything in life. It's sort of, if you want something to happen, you have to step into a different space of being and be ready to and willing to do it.
Right. And it comes down to how important is this to you? Well, apparently it is. If you're working with a coach like Helene, the only reason why you even got inspired to do it is because apparently there's something there that's very important to you. So yeah, that's something to point out as well. Now, you also are giving away a copy of your book. Can we talk about that?
Yeah. So my book, You Are Meant to Sing, 10 Steps to Unlock Your Inner Voice, to everybody that's listening today and sends a note, I will happily give them a copy of the PDF of my book. And also to let you know, if you visit my website, I also offer free 15-minute consult calls if you're interested in learning more about the work I do, or more about your voice and you have something that you want to talk through, and just to learn about the programs that I have. And as Sonia also mentioned, I have another program that's coming up on September 9th. And it is the Powerful Voice Leadership Intensive. And this course, this is a group course and it's online. And it's a course that's taking you through how to use your voice to step into your power, your passion, and your purpose. And I've taught for the last 8 years, and I'm teaching again now. This is my 9th year at USC, the University of Southern California, through the Thornton School of Music Arts Leadership Program that was connected to my old life as an arts administrator. And what I've done is I take the students there in this leadership course through getting a similar process of getting to know themselves really well. So knowing what it is to step into a leadership role in their lives and in their communities and in their job. And so I'm taking a lot of those principles and then combining them with all of the work I do in the private sessions with people in the voice. And I've put it into this collective course that's for 8 weeks and meets once a week. And then there's a vocal alchemy class once a week. And it's a very structured way to really step into looking at specifically your purpose and what you're doing with your business, as well as what you're doing with your voice in general. So I've kind of combined the two for this course, so I'm really excited about it.
Yes, and this is the perfect time because people are, some people are reinventing themselves and are also tapping into things that they were passionate about, but didn't have the opportunity or time. However, we frame that in our minds as to why we don't do what we do. But during this particular period, we see that, we've had the opportunity to see that life, there are things that we can do differently. And Helene, you mentioned the corporations and all of that. And for years, it was a passion of mine. I used to publish a magazine as well. And it was originally based on this concept about changing corporate America's mind about working, about people, and being able to have more time with families and so on. So working at home, we're part corporate America, or everywhere. They're seeing how that this can actually work.
For sure.
Like you don't always have to be micromanaging or just overseeing people there in the selected space, which is the building, but that people are getting the work done. So I think now is a perfect time. And then what you're offering, while people are home working, obviously sometimes they're dealing with kids and different things, to be able to have this in between, sort of helps to support all of what you're doing.
Yeah, for sure. And it's really my intention to help people step into this. And what you said is really important, because I felt inspired to do it, especially with the time right now, because I feel that if you're able to shift whatever hardships or difficulties that have happened this time into something for yourself, to shift your own consciousness, your own ability, what you create. I think everybody has gifts they can contribute. I think everyone has a voice that they can contribute in some way. And sometimes it's just about getting the direction for where this next space of life, of offering, of service to the world is needed. Because as I said, anyone that's willing to do the work and step into it is going to figure it out. But sometimes we need a little help to get there.
Absolutely. And again, I mentioned earlier social permission, but I think this is definitely that moment in time as well, for people to really begin to see how much our choices, have relied on, I guess, social expectations, other people's permission. And again, it's the voice, it's that internal voice, which is showing up in that conversation we have in our heads. I always say I have a board meeting going on in my head.
I love that. I have this image of all of these different characters and people that are up there holding court.
That's right, making decisions. And we all do. We have this board meeting, and sometimes, there's different voices that win out in that board meeting. It just depends on, but it's still all you, but it just depends on, which voice is the strongest. If it's the voice that says, you can't do that, which is what happens in meetings too. There's always somebody that's the leader and somebody that says, no, that's impossible.
Yeah. But I think this is the thing, is that I tell my students this all the time at USC, and I tell my clients this all the time, is that there's nobody in this world that's done anything interesting that hasn't also struggled or failed numerous times along the way. There's no one.
Yeah.
And you have to take that into consideration, so that perseverance and resiliency when you're creating things is really important. It's that you have the drive and the passion and the power and the purpose to really step into that, what you're creating, and you keep going, even when people tell you it's crazy or tell you whatever their thoughts are. And you get to the point where I always think true freedom is really when you don't really care what anybody else thinks.
Right, absolutely. It's definitely your choice, and it dovetails right so well into the quote this morning, which is, when we long for life without difficulties, remind us that oaks grow strong in contrary winds and diamonds are made under pressure. And this does not mean that, you just have to suffer so hard, in order to get anything. That I don't think that's necessarily what we're saying. What we're saying is, when those moments arise, you can turn them into opportunities. And that's what Helene has been sharing here today. And the hard work that is involved in things that you really want to come to fruition, you have to apply yourself and commit to that kind of change.
For sure. And I want to say, like, everybody that's done the program and worked with me has had some really major life transformation on the other side.
Absolutely
and I've had a number of people tell me that it's changed their lives, and now they're doing something different. They stood up for themselves and got a promotion. They did this whole thing. So like there's a ripple effect of doing that internal work. So like my real intention is like, it's not just empowering people, it's empowering people to share their voice in a way that brings them more joy.
Yes, that's key. That's absolutely key. Yeah, I know because I worked with Helene, and yeah, absolutely. We're almost at a time, we're almost there, but yeah. And you know, for me, my thing was about singing, and so much that was attached to that. You know, starting out with thinking I was going to do Broadway. I mean, so I started out studying to be a vocalist, but anyway, things went a different direction. And so I had not sung in years and had a lot pent up there around it. And so I was decided to work with Helene. And then after that, I did join a choir. So there was a lot that happened for me in that process. So that's why I'm sharing that. And it can happen for anybody in anything that you're dealing with, even your health. Yeah. Yeah. And your voice and your health are connected.
Absolutely.
You know, so that's important. Okay. So, well, we're almost there now. Got less than a minute left. The website again, that people can go to.
Sacralsounds.com is SACRALSOUNDS.com. And I also post a lot on Instagram at Sacral Sounds LA.
Right. And also all of this information, her Facebook, all of that is going to be on the website, on the expansionzone.com. So you'll be able to go there, click on Helene, which she'll be on the homepage, and click on that. And whatever you missed right now, you'll be able to find it there and connect with her and get the PDF and so on and so forth. Helene, it was such a pleasure having you on. As always, it's such a pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you so much, Sonia. It's a pleasure too.
Thank you so much. And to the listening audience, thank you once again for tuning in. And thanks to our engineer, D'Angelo Jones. Do check out theexpansionzone.com. That's the website. And you can check out the archive for all the shows, all previous shows, and this one, also the Expansion Zone TV. And to find out more about me, do visit therealsoniabarrett.com. Do remember to subscribe to my YouTube channel as well, and social media, Facebook, all of that wonderful stuff. And that's it. So as always, I like to remind you to live life to its fullest and question everything. Until next time, see you then.
Everybody's talking about consciousness. Everybody wants that eternal kiss. Yeah, everyone's saying there's more than this. Everyone wants to follow their own bliss. Talking about one love, one blood, one light in everyone. One life, give each other. We are sisters and brothers. We sing all